Now, before I go that, if you look at, I deliberately put some markers on some countries. So keep your eye on Canada, which is the top left-hand side, okay, of the screen. You know where Nigeria is. Further down is South Africa. To your right is China, India, and of course, Japan, okay? Try to imagine the size of the geography, the landmass, okay? There's a document I saw that said if you divide the total landmass of the world by the population of the world, each one of us should have roughly the size of an Olympic-sized stadium. Meaning, the way God has made the world, there's enough for each one of us to have an Olympic-sized stadium. If you have an Olympic-sized stadium, you can farm and feed yourself and feed your children. You have excess land to allow life fallow, and when the current land you're on is exhausted, you can move to another portion of that same Olympic-sized stadium, farm there, and then you come back much later. So there's more than enough for everybody. The question is, why are some people poor and why are some others rich? Okay? So to help you understand this, let's look at the next few slides. These 4 slides are maps of the world. Not different from the first one. It just shows you different perspective. The top left-hand side is a map of what the world will look like if you do it by population, number of people living in those countries. Okay, I'm going to expand them shortly, but just want to give you a broad perspective. To the right of population is workforce. These are the people who are eligible to work in different parts of the world. Okay? And bottom right is youth unemployment. People who are ready to work, youths who are ready to work, who don't have any means of employment. And then to the right-hand side, bottom right-hand side is internet usage. This is how different people use the internet. As I move from one slide to the other, try to focus on Canada, Nigeria, South Africa, and maybe even Japan. Okay? Now, before I move to the next, let me give you a perspective why Canada is very important to me. A few months ago, final stage of interviews, so what I usually do, I meet everybody at once. So I don't interview accountants or engineers. They are too experienced for me, okay? I'm not at that level anymore. I don't know enough to interview an accountant. So I let the CFO and others do the interviews, so I only see them at the final stage. And at the final stage, it's like a community like this, and we're just talking. I'm looking for social skills. I'm looking for that person who is an interswitch person. I'm looking for signs of future leaders in the crowd, okay? So in one of those meetings, I asked them the question, how many of you have applied to go to Canada? 50%. 50. And I turned to my right-hand side to look at my colleague in HRO who had spent 3 months plus on LinkedIn, recruiting and interviewing. These people have not entered into Switch. They've not gotten one query yet. Okay? They've not even earned their first salary, and it's almost certain half of them are going to go. And you're in HR, that can be very demoralizing. Okay? And that is the reality. And there's a reason why. That's why I said, look at Canada. Canada has deliberately recognized their situation, and they've taken certain decisions, and those decisions are having impacts on us. Perspective. Nigeria is not a country in isolation. We're not the only site where construction is going on. We're not the only site where we need workers. People are doing stuff. If we don't do the right things, we could either benefit or suffer from it. Okay? On a more positive note, another interview, not wanting to be demoralized again by somebody telling me 60% or 70% have applied to Canada, I asked a different set of questions. I said, Of all of you here, what don't you like about this country called Nigeria? And they said, power situation. They said, health. Educational system is rubbish. The roads are terrible. You can't even get potable, clean water. Now again, in order not to be totally demoralized, and I asked them, what do you like about Nigeria? And they said the people, the entrepreneurial nature of the people, the fact that we don't give up, the spirit of entrepreneurship, and so on and so forth. And I told them, if you guys had told me, if you tell me to choose a country where they have power problems, infrastructural problems, problem with healthcare, education, everything, but the people have strong entrepreneurial mindset, they don't give up easily, they are happy despite all the challenges, I'd rather go to that country. If you give me a country where the roads are fantastic, there's pipe-borne water, everything, but the people don't have these attributes, I'd rather not go there. Why? You can fix roads easily. You can fix power easily. You can fix education easily. You can fix healthcare easily. What you cannot fix easily is the mind of the people. So one day, somebody's going to come up and these roads will be fixed. Education will be fixed. And by the way, education is being fixed quietly. Roads will be fixed. Electricity will be fixed. And then the true potential of the nation, of people that have this entrepreneurial spirit will begin to come up. The challenge for you and I is to remain sane till then. Okay? Yeah, somebody said persevere. You have to persevere. And don't be carried away by things that are not important. Focus on the important things. So, this is the world population by number of people. Now, take a look at China, India. Now, look at Canada. Canada is almost nowhere to be found. In other words, Canada has a lot of land, but no people. Maybe most of the lands are not places you can live in. Maybe they are too cold, for whatever reason. Therefore, as the world has evolved, Canada, despite the huge expanse of land, does not have anybody to stay there. If you take Japan, small land, lots of people. At some point, China said you can only have one child per family. But look at the shape of Nigeria. It's not too different from what it is with the landmass, which tells me there's balance between population and the landmass that we have relative to other countries. Question is, what are we doing with that land? Okay? By workforce, we complain about unemployment. Look at it again. Look at China. Maybe you're not getting it. See India. See China population. Try to imagine what it was on the geographical map. And see Nigeria, India, China, Canada again, and the US. The US is very balanced. It appears not to shift, whether you're looking at landmass, whether you're looking at population, whether you're looking at workforce. Okay? If you look at Nigeria, it shifts. There's nothing major. The point I'm trying to make is we complain about lack of employment. Maybe it's not as bad as we think. The question is, what are you doing? If employment for you is somebody must have a company and apply to work there, then a lot of us will not have jobs. Okay? So maybe it's time to begin to change your perspective. I'll give an example. We made a policy in InterSwitch that none of our relatives can work in the company, meaning my kids cannot work in the company. They cannot even do IT. So I can help your child to work in InterSwitch, but my child cannot work in InterSwitch. So a few years ago, I went to visit my daughter in school, and I told her to invite her friend to come meet us at the hotel. Let's all have lunch. So she said, the only friend around is her friend from China, and her father was also around too. So just like I came from Nigeria to visit her, her own father came from China to visit her also. So I said, okay, invite both of them, let them come to my hotel, let's have dinner, and let's just talk. So the man came. He couldn't speak English. So the communication was not easy. I will ask his daughter something. The daughter will say it in their language. The man will respond in the language. The daughter will interpret, that kind of thing. So everything went on well till late in the evening when we were almost done. And the man said something in their language. And it was actually directed at my daughter. And his daughter translated it. The question was, when you finish school, then my daughter was in A-levels. She never went to university. When you finish school, what do you want to do? My daughter said, I'd like to go back to my country to develop it. Then it hit me for the first time that this girl may come back and not even have a good place to work because she cannot work in InterSwitch. So where is she going to work? Since then, I've started teaching my children about entrepreneurship. There may be no job for you when you come, but there may be opportunities that you must tap into. And all three of them have started doing that. They're all trading. They're losing money. It's okay. I did the same thing too. Did some trading, lost some money. InterSwitch was not my first attempt. You people know the successful one. The ones that fail, nobody talks about it. So let them fail for now and learn from that process. The point is the opportunities may not be by applying to work for a company. Okay? I'm going to try and stay focused on my presentation because there's quite a lot to talk about. When I meet people, when I talk about opportunities, there's a lot of opportunities in this country. We're just approaching it the wrong way. Okay? Youth unemployment, so that is it. It's not as bad as we think when you look at it relative to the size of the land, of the opportunity, and the population. But look at South Africa. Maybe you're not getting it. South Africa is this lower part. This is Nigeria here. These are other parts of Africa in green. So let's go back a few slides. So this is North Africa here in terms of workforce, okay, above Nigeria. In terms of population, that is North Africa again. And in terms of, so look at population, look at Nigeria, North Africa, and South Africa. In terms of population, South Africa is a lot smaller, as you can see. Okay? Now, look at workforce. Relative to Nigeria, the same thing. Look at unemployment. South Africa is the big green at the bottom. Look at the way it jumped out compared to Nigeria. So when you think you have problems of unemployment, the other parts that are more developed, that have bigger issues. And I'm trying to decouple, thank God Dr. Doyi Salami has gone. I don't believe in GDP. And I'll show you why. It tells you the wrong thing. There are a lot of activities that can take place that GDP will not capture. So if I want to plan my business on the basis of what the GDP is saying, I will not do a lot of things. I call it street. You need to understand the cocoa, what's happening of the matter. That is where it comes from, okay? Internet usage. For the first time, Nigeria appears to have expanded, bigger than South Africa, meaning that our youths, our people, seem to have connected with the internet in one form or the other. And so we're looking at opportunities for growth. Maybe you cannot totally ignore the internet, is the message I'm trying to bring out here. Okay? So, I got this from Best Macroeconomic. In fact, I belong to a chat group where they shared this, and they attributed it to him. So I copied it, and I sent it to him. I said, sir, is it true? Did you say this? He said, yes, it's true, but I wasn't the one that said it. It was the economist. And so he sent me what you can see on the screen. So that came straight from him. The message here is that a few years ago, we had the highest number of entrepreneurs. We were number 2. Today we're number 1. And what Dr. Bismarck is saying here is that it's either Nigerians have found opportunities that they're exploring. That is why the degree of entrepreneurship for Nigeria is going up. And that to me is a good sign. Okay? Because if these guys get it right, someday they will employ people. And I'll give you an example. There's a lady I know, I helped to get a job in a company. A few months later, the HR manager called me and said, your candidate has resigned. So I was very upset. So I went to their home, spoke to the mother. Why will this lady leave this job? It's long and short of it all, and I'll be very blunt. She said, listen, I work for this company. I'm in a sales job. I'm a lady, an attractive one for that matter. When I go to sell, nice product, nobody buys. The people I said to are men. They want to invite me for dinner or lunch. My male counterparts, we go sell and close the deal in one meeting. My own, I'll be eating lunch and dinner over the whole place. End of the month, when it's time to present what you have done, I have nothing to show. And it's embarrassing for me. So I had to leave. She has 10,000 followers on Instagram. She's dealing in clothes, fashion. She's making more money than she was making when she was working. She doesn't have to wake up and join traffic like me in the morning. All she needs is her phone, data, the internet. Lies on the bed, checking out for latest fashion, because all of you want fashion. So she's checking. She stuff, post it, all of you go to buy. Okay? So she left an employment, a job she had, to go into her own personal business where she can wake up anytime and sleep anytime. I don't think that's a bad deal. She belongs to this category of people. So if you are here and you think, yes, Mitchell, it's easy to say it, I don't have money. I didn't have money when I started IntelSwitch. All I had was an idea. The man who has ideas never has money. And so most times, people who have monies, I don't want you to quote me. So money has to meet idea. I started IntelSwitch 3 years after NYC. What did I have? If you go look for the perfect definition of entrepreneurship, entrepreneurs never have anything. They just have an idea and a passion. Then they develop that idea and passion, and somehow they end up meeting somebody who has money, lacks passion, lacks ideas, but is looking for somebody to invest in. Okay? This is something from KPMG, looking at what they see as the 10 macro trends for 2020. And one of the things they've talked about is accelerated technology and digital. This is here. So they talk about accelerated technology and digital financial services. And this is what I want to define quickly. Digital financial services is not banking. It's not technology for banking. And I'll give an example. Many years ago, Mrs. Ifweko Omoigui Okaru, then chairman of Federal Revenue Service, called me and said, Mitchell, we have a problem. I cannot tell Mr. President the amount of tax that we have generated. The only way to know how much tax we have generated is to pick up the phone and call each of the banks to find out how much money they have in there. We collect it, and then we can tell Mr. President. Okay? And this was the time when Obasanjo was president. The painful thing is that if I call them the next week and ask them for what we had last week, the figure is different. We can't run the country like that. What can we do? So I sat down, listened to her, and I told her what you want to know. So we defined the problem is you want to know who paid their tax, what tax was paid, how much was paid, who received the money, and where is the money now? Is that correct? She said yes. That solution cost us 400 million naira to build. Of the 400 million naira, 56 million came to InterSwitch. The balance went to put a data center at FRS, and so on and so forth. Visat and so. Who funded that project? 4 banks. Was it a bank loan? No. They funded it and they made their money based on approval we got from FEC then for a certain percentage of every collection to be paid to them until they made back. Each of them gave us 100 million naira. That is fintech in action. But it was for government, not for banking. So the way to look at digital financial service is to say there are different ecosystems of people, of citizens, of individuals, of companies, of corporates who are doing one form of transaction or the other, one form of human activity, where payment is a big problem. It's friction. How do we remove that friction? Using digital technology. So if you thought when you're coming here that I'm going to talk to you about opportunities in banking, I will not mention banking. We have finished everything there. So don't waste your time. Let's talk about the areas where there are still opportunities that nobody has tapped into, okay? And I have a few examples. Urbanization. The traffic we are seeing in Lagos, I told somebody I don't like leaving Lagos in December. Not because of all the shows. We'll go for a few, no doubt about it. But Lagos in December gives me hope. It gives me a view of what is possible. That I can wake up and tell you, I'm coming to your house in 30 minutes, and in 30 minutes I'm there. I need that hope to stay alive. So even if I travel out of Lagos, by 26th I'm back, and I must experience that period of bliss. But what is causing the traffic? Opportunities in Lagos, huge population, everybody wants to come to Lagos. Okay? And it's not going to stop. To keep expanding, one day you'll be living in Ejebode and you tell them you live in Lagos. Because it's just going to keep expanding because the opportunities are there. Okay? But there's a connection between urbanization and the growth of digital financial services. People need to be able to interact. And I'll give you an example. Remember that lady I talked about that has a page on social media? How do you pay? You see a dress you like, you pick up the phone, typically they will leave a number, you call a number, hi, I can see you have this dress, I would like to buy it. Do you still have it? Yes, I do. How do I pay you? I will WhatsApp you my account number. Step 1. Step 2, I look at who are our mutual friends, who are those following her that I also follow. I can see Bolanle follows her too. I pick up the phone, I call Bolanle. Bolanle, how now? I'm on this lady's page. I want to buy a dress. I can see you follow her. Have you bought from her before? Is she legit? Yes, she's legit. You can buy. 2 calls. And then you now do the transfer. Third action. And then you're now waiting for the things to be delivered. You now start calling. I've paid you. Have you received alerts? Yes. When can I get it? Within the next 48 hours. 48 hours come, you keep making phone calls. Maybe it ends up coming 72 hours. That whole rubbish can be changed to only 1 step. Why? It's called proof of delivery. I can transfer money to you, InterSwitch, you hold it in escrow, send a message to the lady that Lagbaja has sent you money. We have it because we're a trusted third party. When you deliver the goods, the person will notify us through an app that we have given to you. And once we know the good has been delivered, we will release the money to you. No phone calls, no waste of data, and so on and so forth. That is what digital financial services means. Looking for areas of friction in any commercial transaction, digitizing it, and reducing what could potentially be 5 steps that waste your time and resources to almost just one step, what we call one-click purchase. That is what we do for a living. And so if you're looking about innovation in this space, these are the kind of things you should be thinking about. And I'm going to share some with you shortly. I'm going to skip that. Let's go to the real opportunity because of time. So what you have here is, I'm trying to drive 4 agendas here. One is inclusive growth. Everybody can take part in it. We can reduce poverty at the same time. We can create jobs. And of course, we can introduce efficiency, just like I talked about before. Now, I'm going to do a bit of marketing here because I just can't come tell you all the opportunities. I run a business. We also want to grow. We want Augusto to give us good ratings tomorrow again when we come. So what I'm going to be showing to you is what we are doing already, but it doesn't mean this is the only way to do it. This is one perspective. Always remember what I said before. There are many doors. We've only entered one. So don't come and tell me, oh, Interstreet has done it. Because some of you can easily say Interstreet has done it. There's nothing else. It's a lie. There are many doors. We only entered one. There are others. Maybe you shouldn't come into the one I've entered. Look for the other ones and enter it too. Okay? There are more opportunities. Okay? Health. November 14 last year was my birthday. I happened to be on an official assignment in Dubai. So I decided to celebrate my birthday by going for a total medical checkup. So I sat down with this doctor. After all the reviews, we got talking. And I said, where are you from? I said, I'm from Nigeria. I said, you're from Nigeria. That means there's a high likelihood you have glaucoma. I said, why? He said, well, that's what we've seen. A lot of people from your country, from Africa, they have glaucoma. I said, what causes glaucoma? He said, it's pressure on the eyes. Wahala, pressure on the eyes. I said, is that from high blood pressure? I said, yes. So you say we all have high blood pressure in the country? I said, yes. And we don't know? Yes. So what do we do? It's simple. It can be prevented. Well, to be honest, sometimes it's hereditary, but by and large, it can be prevented. I say, how? He says, the kind of food you eat. Do you exercise? I said, so tell me about this glaucoma again, because now I was getting worried. And he said, well, it's not a big problem. It takes roughly 24 years for it to become full-blown. It's a gradual process. And you will not know, because human beings see with the center, the pupil of their eyes. Animals see with the periphery. It starts affecting the periphery, and it starts spreading. By the time you start noticing it, your eyes are going bad, it's almost too late. That is why most of your parents end up becoming blind in their old age. So you can be prevented. Say, yes. That's how you prevent it. Say, well, there are 3 ways. But the easiest one, which I recommend for anybody, is eye drops. I say, me, be taking eye drops all my life because of what? As what kind of I say, just to dilate the eyes to, I'm not a medical doctor, so if I'm talking rubbish, please bear with me, get the gist. It's just to dilate the pupil of the eyes or something so that the pressure can leave. I said, but why can't you do it all your life? Then he shared with me a perspective, which I never saw before. And that perspective is what is changing the way Interstreet is looking at healthcare. A few months ago, we acquired a company called Eclat. What is Interstreet doing in healthcare? It's a big problem in healthcare. It's not a problem that government can solve, because they can't solve it. They can regulate, but they cannot solve it. It's you and I that can solve it, because there's a perspective we have that they don't have. This was the perspective he gave to me. Say, all your life, you brush daily, maybe twice a day. All your life, you'll be taking a bath. You cut your hair. You rub body cream. You take part of the physical part of your body, and this sensitive thing called your eyes, I'm asking you to put a drop every night before you sleep. It's a problem, but you don't mind jumping up from bed to go and brush and take maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes to brush your teeth. Then I realized how stupid it was not to protect your eyes. So blindness can be prevented. Insight. Less than 7% of Nigerians have health insurance. Why? Some people will tell you it's because they go to church, so they are using faith to avoid falling ill. You and I know that is not true. We are too poor to care about health insurance. It's a waste of money. That's how people see it. You cannot predict that you fall ill. In interest, which we have seen it. We pay health insurance, a lot of money, nobody's falling. It's a useful company. They want to say, we're not going to do that anymore. Let's give the staff the money themselves. Because we just pay money to people. And they're not coming back to tell you that, last year, interest rate, your health insurance bill was 1 billion. Because people did not fall ill, let us reduce it. They don't ever reduce it. You just keep paying. And so one is always going to wake up for 5 years, I'll be paying health insurance. And we're not consuming it. Why are we still paying it? But guess what? In this same country where people don't go pay for health insurance, you go to communities where they'll take buckets, put cement inside, put a rod inside, and they've created their weights, their lifting weights. They want to have good bodies. People are paying 10,000, 15,000 naira per month to register for gyms. Gyms are springing up everywhere. What are they trying to do? Maybe they're trying to look good, or maybe in looking good, they're hoping they will not fall ill. So why are we paying health insurance when we can do something around wellness? Verve, one of our products, has given out 50,000 Fitbit devices as all of these corporate gifts. 50,000. No science behind it. Meaning, we can't capture data. Imagine people were able to capture that data every night. It checks how you sleep, your blood pressure, cholesterol level, and you upload it. And the robot is checking and telling you, Mr. A, we noticed that in the last 4 months, your blood pressure has been going up, your bad cholesterol is high, you are likely to become a candidate for a heart attack if you don't do something about it. Come and talk to a doctor. You can move this thing from curative to preventive. Okay? So what we are trying to do with our investment here is to change that narrative to say, how can we encourage people to be more healthy by exercising, creating communities where people will take walks, run, people are more conscious of their food, and we give them stuff at the pay. And peradventure, after all of this, since they still fall ill, what they have paid is enough to take care of their health care. It's part of what we are thinking about in this particular space. Okay? If one approach does not work, you need to think about a different approach. And most times, you have to look at the behaviors of the people in your community to decide what that approach should be. Let me raise this with one example. When we started InterSwitch, we're not the first payment company. There were many others. Everybody was trying to eliminate cash. Wrong. Cash was not the problem of the man on the street. Cash was the problem of the central bank and the banks. I had no problem carrying 20,000 naira note in my pocket. How much do I have anyway? The money I have is not too heavy for me to carry. So all this talk about cash is this or that. Yes, armed robbers will attack you because you have cash on you, but why do I carry cash on me? So we had to define the problem. The problem was not that cash was bad, was that Nigerians needed to have cash just in time. We carry too many cash because when we need cash, there's no way to get it other than to go and queue up in a bank and get tally numbers. And the banks close at 4. And they don't work weekends. So on Friday, you must get enough cash for the whole weekend. So what you need to eliminate is that mindset that I must get cash. And that mindset is coming because all around you, in church, they carry offering basket, it's cash. That's the mindset. All the supermarkets around you is cash. So you are forced to carry cash. Okay? So we thought the best thing to do was to make cash available just in time to change behaviors. The ATM was the only product we introduced that we never marketed once. It just grew on its own. What is the learning point there? If we want to fix health insurance, let's ask ourselves, the man who's going to benefit from health insurance, what is his real issue? And how would he like that real issue to be dealt with? It may not be what we are doing today. You need to look at the journey and look at all the problems and see how you can reduce all those petty things to just one click. Okay? Oil and gas. So I'll do something with Wando. We've tested in Olakbere. What are we trying to do here? There's a big problem. I used to live in VGC. One day, I went to work. My wife called me and said, babes, there's an issue. I said, what? I think guards are stealing our diesel. I said, how come? So apparently, we had gone to work. My wife's friend was going to work, maybe at about 10, and saw my security guard struggling with a big 50-liter jerry can going to my neighbor's house. So I got home that night. I called my guard. I said, where are my jerry cans for diesel? He said, oh, they are there. I said, okay, but I can't see one of them. He said, no, your guy's complete. It's two. I said, no, it's not. There are 3 jerry cans. He said, okay, yes. Our neighbor borrowed one. So I said, wait here. So I went to my neighbor's house, called his guard. I said, okay, where's my jerry can that you took? He said, I got me. No, I'm not taking any jerry can. I said, but you took my jerry can. I said, no, me. So I called my own guard now, put both of them to look at each other. Then I stood, I was watching both of them. And I said, so he said he didn't take the jerry can. You said he took it. So mine said, I bet you took it now. Have you forgotten? And because of that thing, I could see him winking at him. The other one, I said, yes, I'm sorry. Oga wanted me to buy diesel. Oga is my neighbor now. So I picked up the phone. I called him back in. How far? Why are you borrowing this thing up and down? Aki said, me? I didn't take anything. Bottom line is, diesel theft is big business. And it's big business because you and I have no way of tracking. So that is a problem to be solved. And there's a very simple way to solve it. It is possible for you to put something in your tank, connect it to your mobile phone. As your diesel is going down, it is checking if there's electricity. There's no reason why your diesel should go down at the same time as electricity being consumed. Okay? And so based on that, you can tell something is going on. Today, if that happens, you can send a drone to your house to take a picture of what is going on. If you are the service provider of that kind of service, I may be willing to pay you some money for that picture, more than I'll pay you if I was withdrawing cash from an ATM. More important, I can also work with meter manufacturers to be able to tell when electricity units are running low. While I'm in the office, the meter will talk to my phone and reorder electricity. All you need to do is just say, okay, one touch. We have your details already. We'll pay electricity units, and your meter will be topped up automatically. These things are possible. We're working on it. You have to eliminate theft. You have to eliminate the ability of your driver to go to the filling station, put half of the fuel he's supposed to buy in the car, and put the other half in a jerry can. All those are things we know today happen, and that can be eliminated. So we're working with Wando to solve that problem. Transportation. A few months ago, or sometime last year, Minister for Transportation lamented how people were hoarding train tickets. And I was very embarrassed. Because today you can buy movie tickets online. You can buy tickets for shows online. But we can't buy train tickets online. Why? Is it because we cannot do it? How can we come to national TV and be seeing that people are hoarding train tickets? That technology is the most basic technology. It can be solved. A few days ago, one of my friends sent me a message. He said, Mitchell, now they have eliminated cash at the toll. Fantastic. But why must all of us get that tag? Why can't we just pay with a normal bank card? It's contactless, some of us have. There are a lot of things that happen in this market. You just wonder if we are thinking. Okay? So these are opportunities that we can all tap into and solve it. Even if the people who are there don't know, you can walk up and say, look, there's a better way to solve this problem. There's nothing new about this. So these things have been done before. Okay? Nigerians want to shop everywhere, want to shop online. Many years ago, we took a decision at InterSwitch that e-commerce will not work in Nigeria because of the problem of distribution, logistics. That problem has not been solved. When I buy online, I want to be able to tell the date will come, and I want to be able to track it. We knew that some of you will go online and buy something, you don't have the money. We'll do the wahala of bringing it to your house. You'll be looking at us through your curtain, but you won't come out. We'll take our goods back because you're just testing. Some of you will buy black. We'll bring black. You say, no, it was white I bought. We'll argue. We'll take it back. So until all of those issues are solved, really commerce cannot take place. So I'm not surprised at the experience that Jumia, for example, has had. So we defined in InterSwitch that we only deal in what we call digital goods for now. Airtime. Nobody's going to just carry it, come and deliver to you. You pay your DSTV bills online. Everything is electronic. You transfer money. Nobody's carrying cash to go and deliver. There's no logistics involved. It's electronic. Then the next step, we'll now begin to try, without carrying inventory, the challenges with e-commerce. So what we did first was to make it such that you can buy offshore, pay in Naira, and then you wait to see when it comes. And we have a well-known company like DHL delivering. You know it's not going to come in 24 hours, but you know when it's going to come. And we're doing that study. That study is revealing a lot of problems that can be resolved. Until we resolve that problem, true e-commerce cannot take place in Nigeria. But it can be solved, okay? And the people to solve that problem are in this room, okay? Last slide. I've got less than 10 minutes more, so I'm going to keep to time. I talked about that I don't care about GDP. Dr. Doye Salami taught me in LBS, so don't get me wrong. And I know the moment I said that, Dr. Ben and Augusto, what is this guy talking about? So let me explain so I don't get me wrong. Oh, sorry. What have I done? So this is InterSwitch. The slide on the left is GDP. So, of course, that era we have negative GDP was where we had the recession. The line in blue is basically our transaction revenues. Why have I put the chart on the left, on the right-hand side? The chart on the right-hand side is actually the number of transactions on InterSwitch. So that is how we make our money. I want you to compare it with the chart on the left-hand side. During the recession, InterSwitch grew faster. If I plan this business based on GDP, I will miss the opportunity. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying GDP as a concept is wrong. But when you are in a country like this, where a lot of things are informal, don't use only formal ways of analyzing things. Use formal and informal. And informal is behavior of the people in your community. That may not be. So a few months ago, a group of professors from Harvard Business School came to Nigeria to visit, and they stopped by InterSwitch. And I told them that before I went into university, I've been studying Michael Porter. So I knew Michael Porter's 5 forces before I went into university. And as I like him, I've read most of his books, The Competitive Advantage of Nations and so on and so forth. So please, when you see him, tell him that in Africa, the forces are more than 5. It's not 5 forces. Those 5 forces are relevant, but there are more relevant forces that he has not seen. Okay? We call it local best practice. We study what the white man has done, what works, we bring it here, and we think about our people, streets, what I call streets, the behaviors, the culture, and decide what will work or what will not work. So GDP as a concept works in advanced communities where everything is digitized and captured, but in a country where a lot of things are informal, where we don't even know what is happening. How much did Naira Marley make from his show? Nobody knows. How much tax is he going to pay? But we know we all paid money to attend the shows. So to know how much tax Naira Marley has to pay, we have to go and find out who were just attended the show and how much they paid and begin to work from there. You cannot go to Naira Marley's account and check to know. That's what I'm talking. So be open, okay? And what I'm saying here is that behaviors change in recession. We need to tap into it. Nigeria is a very poor country. Let's not be deceived. Okay? And so there's a lot of poverty mentality in the way people do things. Okay? Now, we shouldn't remain there, but you need to understand that it exists today. And I'll give you one example. Recession, people heard there was recession. Without knowing what it meant, they just assume I have to reduce how much money I withdraw from the bank. So the man who go to the ATM before and withdraw just once, 20,000 naira, and pay, let's assume it was still 100 naira once. He now hears there's recession. He goes to the same ATM, he withdraws 5,000 and pays 100 naira. But the man still has 2 wives, 7 children, living in one room somewhere. He assumes that all of a sudden, because there's recession, if I withdraw 5,000, we'll be fine. Of course, you won't be fine. So he goes back, withdraws the last 5,000. In the end, what he should have paid 100 naira for, he has paid 400. That is what you're saying. Okay? Now, the central bank has reduced fees, has asked banks to reduce fees. Some banks, from what I gathered, have gone ahead to reduce the amount of cash you can withdraw from ATMs from 10,000 to 5. Meaning you're going to do more transactions and pay. You need to key into those kind of insights in the market. Okay? Digital. We have the needs, okay? But in future, machines will take the decisions. I just give you an example. Mitchell, we have been checking your health data. I think you need to come in to see the doctor. While I was sleeping, data about my sleep pattern, blood pressure was being uploaded. I didn't have the time to check my health, but somebody is checking on my behalf, and it's telling me it's time to come in. Something is sending you an email that we have checked your son's performance in the last 3 semesters. We think there's a problem here. I think you need to come to a school. It's a computer you're talking to. A few months ago, I traveled. I think it was Air France that was on strike or so. So I was told to go to another airport. And I got a message on the app. And I was told that if a new flight has been created for me on KLM. I got there. They couldn't find my name on the stuff. So I went back to the chat. I said, oh, sorry, I'm at the airport, but I can't find my name. And the thing gave me a response back. I looked at the response. This looks like a robot. I was chatting with the robot. The robot tried, but it wasn't as smart as a human being. But I'm just saying, we have the needs, but the decisions will be taken by who? By machines. And it's already happening in IntelSwitch. So we now have one new staff called Vera. I can't see this very well, unfortunately. But bottom line is, there are many reports we upload daily. Sometimes 3,000 reports. So all those transactions, we do over 500 million transactions. We have over 8,000 institutions that need that report to see how much they have made from yesterday. Okay? So we have a group of people, staff, maybe 50 of them, and their job every morning is to make sure those reports are available. Today, one robot is doing what all of them are doing with better accuracy. Have we reduced jobs? No. We've just moved them into other areas. Okay? But guess what? This is efficiency. Okay? Lastly, nothing I've said here is something you must take as this is the rule of the game. Okay? Nobody has access to all the information they need at any point in time to take a decision. So most times you have to take a decision based on the facts you have now. But the facts change. And when they change, you need to have the boldness to look at people and say, sorry, gentlemen and ladies, I said we should go to the north. I think now we should go to the east because the facts have changed. In a dynamic community like ours, things will keep changing. One government policy tomorrow may require you to change your strategy. And I made a very big mistake many years ago, and I know my time is up, so I'm closing now. Many years ago, the central bank announced consolidation. Okay? Before then, I had done a very fantastic strategy. And I shared it with some of my directors, including Filippo Doza, who was then CEO of UBA. And he actually said, Mitchell, this is fantastic. This is the kind of thing Harvard professors will do. So I was feeling very cool with myself. This was 2 weeks to board meeting. So as expected, board documents have gone out 2 weeks ahead of the board meeting. Board meeting day, I walked boldly into the board meeting, very proud of my strategy documents. And they started talking. Then Sheikh Akabueze said something. He said, Mitchell, I can see you think, based on this strategy, that there will be 32 banks in Nigeria. I said, no, that's not what I mean. I mean, this year, InterSwitch will connect to 32 banks. There are more banks, there are 90-something banks. I just said this year we can do up to 32. And he said, but the central bank just announced consolidation. So by the end of this year, how many banks do you think we'll have? It wasn't a new strategy has gone wrong. Something happened a week ago that had not factored in. The facts have changed. In the end, we didn't have 32 banks. 25. So things change. And when they change, also change your mind. Thank you.
Sorry, I think we can do better than that. Can we give him some warm applause to appreciate what he has done? There must be a second mic somewhere. So thank you very much, Mr. Mitchell Elegwe, for such an insightful presentation. I think there's a lot to learn. And I think it's also important, to realize those of us who are thinking of going to Canada, I'm sure after this presentation, maybe a few of us will have to reconsider and think about the opportunities that lie within our shores here in Nigeria and try and take advantage of it. We would move to the next stage. We have 30 minutes for questions and answers. We use the Slido deck to do this, and I don't know if, Mitchell, you want to read and then answer that. It would come up on screen very shortly. Yeah, is that all right? Okay, thank you very much.
Just out of curiosity, are the questions coming as they were asked, or they've been grouped?
Yeah, they'll come in as they are asked, but the ones that come up to the top are the ones that have been repeatedly asked or maybe liked. So you get the most liked questions coming up. And technical. Begin to sound like Pastor on Sunday. Technical. Okay. All right. I need to use. Sorry, can I just. This is not coming up. Oh, God. Okay, I'm going to have to read this out since it's not actually coming on the screen. So the first one says, Hi, Mitchell. What was InterSwitch's business case for investing in healthcare?
Okay, so...
Eclat, yes.
Yeah, so You want the honest, let me give you an honest view. A lot of things we do is we are trying to solve problems, okay? There's sometimes not a business case. The interest-free business case is not what we implemented. December 4, 2002, first board meeting I've ever been in my life. So before then, I was not in the boardroom. Mr. Arnold Ekpe, then of UBA, asked me a question. He said, Mitchell, we have been asked to invest in eTransact. We have invested in Value Card, now Unified Payments. Some of us also, by virtue of what CBN has done, we own NIBs. All of you are trying to do the same thing. What makes you think you'll be successful? While I was trying to think of the answer, somebody in the room said, well, I think the banks have to place multiple bets. So later, I left that board meeting, went to my office, picked up the business plan. I said, okay, so these banks are just using us to play kalo-kalo. They are placing multiple bets. Anyone that wins, what will make InterSwitch win? Immediately I said, we must do something others are not doing. Everybody is trying to eliminate cash. Why must we eliminate cash? That was how I got the idea that the problem was not eliminating cash, was making cash available just in time. That thing is called disruptive thinking. I don't use business plans to drive business. I use disruption to decide what to do. If in South Africa, 90% of the people have health insurance, if insurance companies are bigger in most parts of the world than banks, and I'm in a country where insurance companies are not big, I need to ask myself why. That is not business plan. I'm not an insurance company, but why? And I start looking for insights that will make me do things different than has been done. So healthcare is like that, okay? And this one is very personal to me. So many years ago, I got a call from the village that I lost 4 of my cousins, 4 in 1 month, same father, same mother. And typical of most African societies, it came to the mother is a witch. You don't chop all the children. Then I said, even if the mother is a witch, make it use sense now. Can't just eat all of them in 1 month. You should spread it out. This common sense. You have to keep enough for next year and the year after and the year. So, of course, it didn't make sense to me. And she had other children. Why is it only the ones in the village there that we can easily link to her? What about the ones in the cities? Why did she not go after those ones, the older ones? Long and short of it all, they died from, is it cholera, dysentery, whatever they call those waterborne diseases. And with all that disease, they were giving them, they call it agbo on top to drink. I think it was malaria. But guess what? There was a hospital in the village, actually being run by an in-law of ours. So we asked them, why did you not go to see the doctor? See, those people, the doctor starts telling you to pay consultancy fee. How much do we have? So that was the first point. So I came back and I reached out to one of the HMOs. I don't want to mention the name now. I knew one of the owners. And I reached out and I said, listen, God has blessed me. I can afford to put everybody in my village, in my family, in my village, on an HMO scheme. Why can't we give them access to HMO? There's a hospital in my village. Just go and put them on your scheme. I will pay. Let them, once they have an issue, let them go there. They went and came back. Bottom line, it never happened. The economics, so we'll pack that one. Then I have mother-in-laws, father-in-law that need to get medical. They're retired. Same thing. These guys will be ill. They don't want to disturb their children. They're managing themselves. Who beg you? Okay, you know what? So eliminate that. Let us give them health insurance. Nobody has a health insurance for them. Everybody is targeting you and I that are low risk. You and I that have access to information. We know the internet. We know what intermittent fasting does, so we can do it. We have money to pay for gyms. But those that have no access to information, nobody's taking care of them. That is why we have less than 5%. That is why that 5% comes from, if you're not a government worker or working for private sector, you don't have insurance. That rubbish has to stop. So we're doing something with the state government. We're doing something with 9 state governments. Some of the state governments, we're trying to position them to have their own health insurance scheme. in a model that you think will work. Will we succeed? We don't know, but we're going to try. And this is not about business case. Everything is about business case. It's about what problem are you trying to solve, and is that problem big enough to have an impact on your society? If it's big enough, people will reward you, and then you make your money. There are many decisions you cannot take on the basis of what is the business plan. Okay?
Okay, thank you very much, Mitchell. You mentioned disruption in your last answer. There's a question here that says, going by the recent happenings in innovation, example, AI, robotics, etc., in your opinion, what is the future of work in Nigeria and globally? Okay, so maybe we need to tie this up with what's happening in this fintech space and make it more specific. How do you see that going? How do you see the market going? How can we reposition ourselves as someone who wants to take opportunities within that space to try and take advantage of that?
Okay, so it's a very broad question, and it's the kind of question you can answer, and then you just end up answering it the wrong way. So let me just tell you the one I think is relevant. I don't care about the future of work. I just care about work. I run a company. I'm losing staff. I never used to lose staff before. Before, when I go to the board and I show them that staff turnover is less than 3%, they used to attack me and they say, how come industry today people don't leave? Then one day I woke up, 18% from 3%. I enter panic mode. It has not stopped. Sometimes it comes down from 18 to 15, it comes to 16. Now my biggest challenge today is Canada. And I can do nothing about Canada. Okay? So when you talk about the future of work, there's one thing that is important to me is, does my staff feel like going to work every morning when they wake up? Okay? If the answer is yes, I am fine. Are my staff able to meet their responsibilities in the society when they need to? And we all have the same needs. There are those, all they want is, I want to be able to rent a house to live in Lagos. And that is all they need. There are those who have rented houses, they now need money to get married. There are those who have gotten married, they now need money to send their children to school, and so on and so forth. My job is to ensure that I look at the demographic of my workforce and make sure that they're able to meet their needs at the time they need to meet it and save some more. I cannot come and kill myself. Once I've done that one, I've discharged it. If you want to do more, if you're worried about the future of work, I don't know, we've done Flexi. Flexi is a problem. Some people want to work from home. How can you work? We told some guys to work from home. They're not asking me for money for generator. Better I've put generator in the office. I'm running diesel. You're the one that wants to work from home. You now want me to not pay you diesel allowance to work from home. Come on. There's a limit to how much a company can do. There's Flexi. Okay. You want to take Flexi at a time when your customers want you to be in the office. How do we... So there are a lot of... Then guess what? You want a man to work from home, but you cannot tell in a day what is the output. You don't have the data. But they're doing it in the US, so you want to do it here. And people are disturbing my ears with work from home. We're doing it all. You know, sometimes you just have to give in when HR is talking. But we use common sense to also track. So I don't know about the future of work. I'm not going to try and look into a crystal ball. I just know that every company must try and make sure that their staff are happy, they're motivated, and they wake up in the morning and they feel like going to work.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. There's another question here. It says, what is InterSwitch doing to encourage financial inclusion, especially for those in the rural areas? Now, you know, there are certain innovations that are coming into this space. We have mobile money banking and things like that. So I know it hasn't actually caught on as much as it should, but what can we do, and what is InterSwitch doing to improve financial inclusion, especially for people in rural areas?
You know, I'm a regulated entity, so I'm very careful when I talk about things like financial inclusion. But let me just say this to you. What problem are you trying to solve? And what insights do you have? Let me share one problem with you. So I lived in the village for a year or two. So I actually schooled in the village. So I got a feel for what village life is. Okay? My uncle had a farm. Some of my cousins had farms. My grandmother was the custodian of the wealth of the family. So whenever they farms and they harvest, they deposit it at her feet and she decides who gets what. That's where the family was structured. As the children of the family, what do? On market days, we go to the farm to pick what has been harvested. I will take it to the market. We drop it at the market. I will go away and go and play football. In the evening, we go back to the market. I will take some stuff back home. The market was trade by barter. I don't know what it is like today. There's no money to save. My village used to have 2 banks. And not to mention names of the 2 banks. One was shut down. So they went to include my people. They put a branch there. The bank woke up one day and shut it down because they're not making money. A few years later, some stupid boys decided of all the places they can rob in the community, they went to rob the only other bank that was there. Of course, that bank never reopened it again. So right now, there's no bank in my village. But there was a time we had 2 banks in my village. So when I was looking at this whole financial inclusion thing, I spoke to one of the CEOs of the banks. And he said, Mitchell, be careful. We have created agency banking in lots of the villages in the West. We haven't seen that the economy cannot even sustain an agency bank. Is there a problem we are trying to solve? There's no economy in the village to include. We all send money back home. I may be wrong, but I'm just saying that's the insight I have. Because I cannot understand a few things. Okay? And let me just give some examples to rest it on. I send money to the village. So there's a remittance play. Improve the ability for money to leave cities to the village. The question is, those monies that leave the cities to the village, are they going to end up in a bank? Or would they be used almost immediately as they arrive in? So what did I do? When that bank branch was there, I actually opened an account in that bank branch, and I got a debit card. Okay? And I gave the debit card to my family members, so that every time I want to give them money, I make sure that account is funded, and they go to the ATM to withdraw. Do you know where the ATM was? I'm from a place called Ibilo, in Akoko, the local government area. The nearest ATM was in a town called Igara, the headquarters of the local government area. So my people have to go for about maybe 30 to 45 minutes to Igara to get the cash. So when they shut that bank, that one died. But there's an Igbo trader in my village who, from nowhere, I don't know how he managed to enter that village, but from the east, saw there's an opportunity in that village. So he came there, and he has a very nice supermarket. Now, my people don't care about Bonvita or Milo. Those are luxuries there. But somehow, they realized that water, bottled water, pure water, helps instead of the village stream. So they go to buy. The way to send money home is to send a code, what we have called VFP code, to my people in the village via SMS. They go to that Igbo man's shop, say, I want to buy water. So I introduce a transaction for the man. But instead of paying for the water with 10,000 naira, they tell him, we want cash back, and we want to pay 50,000 naira. So he collects the code for 50,000 naira, gives them water of 10,000 naira, and gives them change of 40,000. But this assumes he has cash sitting with him. Those are the kind of solutions I think will work today. Why? When my mother goes to the farm, to the market, we don't produce beans and rice. Other people come from other villages to the market. So it's a place where everybody must go. That's why they have market days. And they told us that if on the market day you go to the farm, you're either a spirit, that's the myth, or you're a thief. It's only spirits and thieves that go to the farm on market days. Why? They want all of us to go to the market so everybody can bring their goods so that trade can take place. And other villagers from other villages come to that market. So what I observed was we produce cassava, we have some yams, but we don't have vegetables, we don't have rice, we don't have beans, we don't have tomatoes. So when my grandmother is done, she looks at what is left. Instead of us carrying yam and cassava back home, she goes around asking other ladies, do you need yam? Yes. I need tomato, give me. Do you need this? I need this, give me. Straight about her. And she can exchange one tuber of yam for one cup of whatever, depending on how desperate she is. There's no fixed price. I don't know what it is like today, but that's what it was then. Something tells me a lot of villages still operate this way. Now, is there a problem to be solved? If there is, there's somebody to think about how to solve that problem. And if that is financial inclusion, that is the way to financially include them. But if it is not, then we need to take on. So I don't just like to use terminologies. I like to look at what the problem is and how to deal with that particular problem. Okay?
Thank you. Now, the deck has come up now. I think we should take the first one because it has more likes. And it says in the payment space, how soon do you think the scan and pay will oust the POS and card payment method?
May never happen. May never happen. So let me tell you what we are worried about. We're not worried. And this is a very important question because it allows me to explain something that every entrepreneur must know. And since we're in a church setting, I call it the triangulation principle. Okay? When I want to do something and I pray about it, I wait to hear from 3 different sources. And most of these are people who were not there when I even thought about it. But they just start talking about it. To me, it's a sign that it's time to move. I've brought that into innovation too. If you have a solution to a problem, try to solve 3 different problems at the same time with one solution. It enhances your likelihood of success. ATM solved the problem of the man on the street who needs to have cash just in time. But at the same time, it helped the bank branch to decongest that bank branch. And it helped the employer of labor to take away that excuse we all used to use. I went to the bank, there was a lot of queue. Meanwhile, even when there was no queue, you had closed from the bank and gone home. So 3 parties benefited from one solution. So adoption was good. Everybody supported it, okay? Let me tell you something that happened. When we built the payment system in Nigeria, MTN, Econet Wireless, we just getting that. GSM was just about to take off. We took a bet that we were going to do an online, real-time, instantaneous network at a time when most countries were still doing batch processing. Okay? A lot of the innovation you have seen now is because of that ability to leapfrog. We designed out the problem. We knew there was power, but we didn't think power could solve it, stop it. We knew telecoms was a challenge. We made a bet that telecoms will improve. A few years later, we started having fraud. And the central bank said that there should be alerts. So today in Nigeria, everybody gets an SMS when they do a transaction. Okay? So how has this thing played into innovation? At the same time, the merchant, the retailer, got a loan from a bank at maybe 20, 21%. So the retailer is not happy because at 21%, that interest rate is too high, but they don't have a choice. The same bank that gave you interest rate of 21% now gives you one device called point of sale terminal and charges you 1.5 or whatever percentage called a merchant service charge, which, from the point of view of the merchant, is a lot of money. So not only do I have to pay your 21%, and I have to pay for every transaction that takes place. It just doesn't make sense. But the merchant has no choice. So what has happened? I go to the merchants to buy stuff. I've collected things I want to pay. For whatever reason, there's a problem with the infrastructure. Point of sale does not work. What does the merchant say to you? Do a transfer. What do? You do a transfer. Who pays the fees of the transfer? Me. Does the merchant pay anything? What do you think the merchant will do? Will encourage you to be doing more transfers. So transfers now becomes the way a lot of people will receive payments. That lady I told you about, how did you pay her money? Transfer. Did she have a point of sale? Did you scan anything? Okay? So scan to pay is a good concept in a market where some other street behaviors have not taken place. You cannot ignore these things. Something else has happened in our market. I'm doing transactions and I'm paying people remotely through a transfer. In most other markets, transfers don't happen immediately. You transfer, you have to wait for a few days. Here, it is instantaneous. You cannot discount instantaneous transfer when you talk about commerce. So whether you want to bring scan to pay, capture to pay, whatever you want to bring, recognize that some other things are happening and they will have impacts on what you are trying to do. Okay?
Okay, so we have 7 minutes, roughly 6-7 minutes for till the end of this section. So I would allow you to choose one question that you want from this slide, and then.
I've seen. Hold on. Okay, I'd like to answer the OP one. Okay. So there are different businesses. That is a very important question. I'm happy somebody brought it up. I keep telling people, Nigeria is not Silicon Valley. Don't make that mistake. I'm on the board of a company called Endeavor, okay? And I sometimes have to sit on panels where we evaluate young entrepreneurs. There was one I did in Cape Town, and I evaluated a company out of Dubai that was like InterSwitch. We are more profitable, we are bigger in clientele, and we have been in operations longer. And the guy to my left-hand side, who was also on the panel from Germany, said, this is a fantastic company. I agreed because I understood the business. That's what I'm into. And he said, this company easily can get $3 billion valuation. And I said, what? This company is smaller than InterSwitch in revenues, in profitability, in customer base. We have been in operations longer, in a more difficult environment, where 5 forces alone don't work. And as at that time, we were still arguing over a valuation of $500 million. And somebody is telling that this company is $3 billion. We just managed, to the glory of God, to get to $1 billion now. And I'm happy with that. There are many forces working against you as an entrepreneur here. And every time I speak to people, I tell them that people like us should be getting a premium on our valuation, not a markdown. It's not easy. Abroad, you want to do anything, every other thing you need has been done already. You just plug it. That's why they can do a narrow strategy. Try a narrow strategy here, you'll be dead. You have to do many things. You want to build an estate, you have to think about the road that will take you to the estate. You have to think about water. You have to think about electricity. In other parts of the world, everything has been laid down. You just come and do a small business case on the building itself, and you're done. So when an entrepreneur says, I'm a real estate person in Nigeria, I respect him. It's not the kind of real estate you are doing abroad. Okay? So what does that tell me? The biggest danger here is that a lot of people are running their companies for valuation. Wrong. And I've seen many. And I worry about it because one day we are going to stop this trend of people wanting to bring money to Nigeria because a lot of entrepreneurs are lying. You don't run your business for valuation. You run your business to solve real problems, and then the reward comes. So I've seen companies. See, I started InterSwitch with 200 million naira that we got from the banks, Smith's Fund, then Central Bank. We wanted 450 million. We only got 200. The business plan said we'll be profitable by year 4. We were profitable by the second year with 200 million naira. Why? Reality dawned. By the time we paid for our office on Okwawo, bought servers, did everything, the money that was left was not enough to pay salaries for 1 year. My shareholders were bankers. I knew the only solution would be come and take a loan. And I knew if we took a loan, we'll not be able to pay, and we will die. So what did I do? We started cutting down costs. I had an employment letter that gave me a car. I didn't have my car for a year. My colleagues did not have their cars for 2 years. I was counting the number of sugar we used for tea, what I call the common housewife economic theory. Okay? That's what we're doing. Yeah, I'll talk about that some other time. There's a theory called the common housewife economic theory. When the breadwinner is a man that doesn't earn a lot of money, and you have 4 children, and it gives you X amount to manage, and you know how to manage it. That's what I call the common housewife economic theory. Go and learn how our mothers did it. If you can learn it, apply to your business, you'll do well. Burning cash in an economy where people are poor is stupidity. Let me explain it. I'm going to take the other one, so don't worry about
please,
the time.
I want to hear this.
Let me explain it. The insight, what I call street, you must have is that when people are poor, and you tell them, I'll give an example. My meal is ewa agoye with agege bread, 300 naira. And I managed to survive with that for many years. Okay? And it's 1 meal a day. And I'm fine. And I'm healthy. And then you now come and you now tell me, come and join this platform. Okay? This ewa agoye that you used to buy for 300, you can get it for 150. And then I come. And then you now introduce some other things that I never cared about. Okay? That extra 150 I have saved has gone to something else, which I'm now enjoying. Then suddenly, 5 years down the line, or 1 year down the line, or 6 months down the line, you tell me that the honeymoon is over. It's time for you to start to pay the 300 that you used to pay before. What do you think an average Nigerian will do? All of you got it right. The answer is unanimous. They get out. And they get out in a very angry way. They carry their friends along and they salt you. Okay? When we were in Egypt, you should have just left us there. Which one is this promised land they have brought us to suffer? That is insight you need to have about our people. So that's, because of that, certain business models where you try to lure people by giving them discounts, it's not sustainable. It always backfire. Instead, spend the time to find out what is the real pain and fix that pain. That one, the man will take out of his 300 naira and be paying you regularly. That's what you did with ATMs. There was a real pain. So this idea of I have access to money, if any Nigerian entrepreneur tries it, you start to lie. You know why you must lie? You've started with lies. You said the problem is this big. And they gave you money. The money has come, you're not getting results. You're now bribing people to come and use. That's what you do. And once you start bribing people to come and use, you have to keep bribing and bribing and bribing to show results. One day, somebody called a private equity firm will come and take a look at your business, because there's a stage it gets to, you cannot be using all this small money. You have to go for big money now. They will not ask you questions. I'll give an example, just to close. Yesterday, I called a Nigerian entrepreneur that I thought we should buy his business. And I asked him, how much is your business worth to you? He said, about $4 or $5 million. I said, how much have you put into this business for the last 3 years? He said, well, I took $1 million from friends and family. I said, okay. So this $1 million has now become $5 million in 3 years. It's okay. I said, $5 million or $4, whatever it came to about 1.8 billion naira. Let's work in naira. And I told him, if you go online for payments, I look at recent deals that have been done. If you take Network International, for example, EBITDA multiple was somewhere in the region of 22 times. So if you take 1.8 billion naira valuation and divide it by 22, it gives you roughly an idea how much in EBITDA you should be making. I think it's about 60 to 70 million annually. I said, do you have 60 to 70 million naira anywhere? He said, no. So on what basis? You get the point? Why? He's just started 3 years. In 2010, we did our first deal in InterSwitch for 26 billion. I did not know the company was worth 26 billion. It never even crossed my mind. I collected 200 million. 10 years or so later, somebody said we were worth 26 billion. I was never thinking about it. Okay? I didn't even believe it. But if somebody was willing to pay, why not? But today, a man who started something 3 years ago will tell you his business is worth $100 million. Where? How? And if you're not careful, there could be somebody abroad who will come in and invest at that $400 million. Now, once they come in like that, they join you to lie because somebody has to keep that lie up. But there's a stage to how much you can lie. Somebody one day will come and say, now let's get down to brass tacks. So my advice to guys is start your business, focus more on the problem you want to solve. That is what people reward you for. People don't care if you want to be rich. What's my business? I have a problem, solve it for me, I pay you. Make sure the problem is big enough for many people to pay you for it. And that is where growth comes from. With growth, valuation will come. Okay, let's not put the cart before the horse.
Thank you so much. And on that note, we come to the end of the session. Please, can you join me in appreciating and applauding Mr. Mitchell Elegbe, who is the MD CEO of InterSwitch. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. So I think you need to remain in here for the to the main auditorium. We have another session coming up, Ease of Doing Business. You don't have to go anywhere. If you can take a toilet break, fine. But we are here for the next session. Thank you very much. I just put this thing. Give me try. Here's what. Sorry. Mitchell, this is the bag from Mitchell. Bag from Mitchell.
Okay, the next session is a plenary and it's taking place here. So please just settle down quickly. And we're moving on to that session. And I'm going to hand you over straight to the moderator of that session who has changed. I mean, we had Mr. Wale and Imasham, but Wale is under the weather today. So Damilola Aloba would moderate that session. But please, for those of you who wanted to be in the creatives and entertainment session, we had an issue with that. Mrs. Austin Peters also suddenly took ill. She confirmed to me yesterday that she'll be with us, but she has sent somebody to speak for her. She sent her GM actually to speak for her. And we have moved that session. That session will take place in the afternoon session starting at 2:40. And it will take place in the same place. It will take place downstairs in the same place. Her GM will be representing her. So to start this session, I'll call on Damilola Aloba to come and moderate this session. Damilola Aloba is a partner in EY.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope we've been having a nice time here. I'll be moderating this session on ease of doing business, and I'm sure you've all wondered what this is all about starting a business, registering your business, accessing credit, enforcing contracts, and a lot more things that has to do with how you operate the Nigerian business climate. And so to anchor this session, I'll be calling on Ayokunu Ojeni, who is from the Ease of Doing Business team at the federal level. And I think there's a video that actually introduces you. Oh, okay. So please let's give him a round of applause. And as he comes forward, he has till 2 o'clock. And then please take note that you can ask questions through Slido. You can put up your questions while he's making his presentation. And then right after his presentation, we can then look at those questions while he answers as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Come on, good afternoon. It's such a great honor to be here with you today. Dr. Oduwole, Special Advisor to the President on Ease of Doing Business, is unable to be here today, and so I'll stand in for. Very quickly, I'll just speak to what the federal government is doing with respect to ease of doing business and the opportunities that we see and the improvements, if any, that have happened in the last 2-3 years. And so I'll just quickly wait for the slides coming. But before then, I'd like to say that the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council was set up by His Excellency the President in July 2016 to do two things. One is to remove the bureaucratic constraints to doing business and to make Nigeria a progressively easier place to do business. So we understand, or the government understands, that there are constraints to doing business in Nigeria. And these constraints are everywhere. You go to meet your regulator, what should ordinarily take 2 weeks, your regulator for some reason doesn't do it in 1 month and doesn't not even communicate to you. And you don't even have a way to check with the regulator how far things are gone. So the council was set up, and it's in the context of the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, sort of the economic blueprint of the administration, which is anchored on 3 things. One was to restore growth. The ERGP came into force in 2016, and the first priority at that time was to restore growth because Nigeria was deep into recession at that time. The second thing is to invest in people, social investment, human capital development, for very obvious reasons. And the third is to build a competitive economy, because if we have to compete as a country, as a nation, then our competitiveness, first of all as individuals, then collectively as a people, must be enhanced. So our work in the ease of doing business is centered on the third pillar, which is building a competitive economy. And competitiveness for us is to the extent to which a country is able to foster an environment where entrepreneurs thrive. And this is very, very critical. Last week, and Mr. Elegbe spoke about it, how Nigeria, according to the Global Economic Entrepreneurship Monitor, Nigeria ranks as the country that produces the most entrepreneurs. So if 1 in every 3 Nigerians is said to own a business or is about to start a business, just imagine the huge potentials our country holds if the enabling environment for 1 out of every 3 Nigerians is favorable, right? So for every decision, so the passion, the individual the things that the individual needs is sort of available, but the external factor appears to be the major problem. So there's a strong case for enabling business environment in Nigeria, and it is government's way. The establishment of the Presidential Council is government's tacit admission that things are indeed difficult for entrepreneurs, and we've got to do something about it. So in July 2016, His Excellency the President set up the council, and I've spoken about the 2 main objectives of the council, and we measure our work through the reduction in cost and time for businesses. The bottom line, essentially, how long does it take for you to get a license, and at what cost? Transparency and efficiency is the second way we benchmark our progress. If an MDA, a ministry, department, and agency says, has a license to give you, you approach, say, a NAFDAC, and you approach a NAFDAC, and NAFDAC tells you, you don't even have a sense of how long it's going to take for NAFDAC to solve this problem. We said it is important for the agency to be transparent. How much does it cost for each procedure, for each process, such that when you go to that office, 3 people will not tell you 3 different prices for the same item. So transparency is important, and of course, focus on the people, processes, and infrastructure, because people would have to move things. For sake of time, I'm not going to speak about the Nigerian economy because we already know, probably better than I do, that by 2015, Nigeria is going to be a large market of about 400, some estimates say 400 and 2 million people in 2050. So to that extent, our population is going to grow, and that also speaks to the fact that as we grow, if we get to do the things we're supposed to do right, that population is not going to be a burden to us, but would be a great, would open new vistas and opportunity. Of course, we signed, Nigeria became a part of the African Free Continental Free Trade Agreement, and the goal is that Africa, of course, Nigeria will be open to about 400 million other Africans. What am I saying? We have about 1.2 billion in Africa. So about 1 billion people would, a big market. So there are opportunities, and I'm sure the previous speakers before me have spoken a lot about the opportunities, so I'm not going to dwell too much about it. Agriculture, of course, because you have got to feed people, and some figures say that about 8 out of every 10 kobo that the Nigerian earns is spent on food. So agriculture would be a great place. Oil and gas, for very obvious reasons. I'm not sure renewable energy will take on as much as has been projected, but whatever the case, oil is still a mainstay, so the investment needs to get into it. Power, the big elephant in the room. I'm sure virtually everybody who has spoken before me have spoken about power. Great opportunities there. Of course, for a country that has one of the lowest power per capita in the world, there's a lot of investment that needs to go into it. And if with the right pricing and a combination of other factors, we would get this. Real estate, education, big problem. We have about 30 million people who are out of school. It's a huge time bomb that we need to solve. So the room for that. Healthcare, Mr. Legbe has spoken about it. I won't dwell on telecommunications and ICT. It's amazing that between 2001 and now, ICT was virtually non-measured on the GDP, but it has grown to about 9-10% in recent times. So, and the internet penetration is growing, and as that grows, opportunities will happen. There are a number of notable projects which speaks to some of the possibilities that lie ahead. Lagos-Ibadan rail project is massive, and one of the reasons why we like to talk about it because it's going to be an enabler of some sort. And because of our involvement in the embarrassing gridlock at Apapa, the sustainable way, there are different options to it, but one of it is that you've got to build the right infrastructure. I was fortunate to visit one of the most efficient spots in the Middle East last month, and it was amazing. I mean, my eyes were open to the possibilities, but of course infrastructure has to be in place. So if you build a port that was probably designed for 40 million TUs in a year, and that has grown to 80, and you're not doing anything about it, you expect that there's going to be some bottleneck around that area. Or if you have roads leading to the port that are largely derelict, then it's going to be a challenge. So the sustainable way, as much as you try to tweak things around, is that you've got to fix the adjoining road to the port, right? And beyond that, you've got to think of how to convey the bulk load that comes into the port to other parts of the country. Are the roads good? So you want to say, we've got to build a road around Apapa. So if you go to Apapa today, you might not necessarily see the improvement, but you see that roads like Liverpool Road, Creek Road, they're either done or under construction. Because if you don't fix the infrastructure around that area, there'll be a problem. Of course, when you also look from Apapa down to Oshodi to Tollgate, the road is also bad. You've got to fix it. If you go there today, you'll see that that road has been done. From the Tollgate, you've got to move things away from the country. So interestingly, I came in this morning from Malaysia because there was some other engagement that one of the ministries was involved in. And it was interesting for me that I was able to complete the trip from Ibadan 1 hour. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done, but the story today is quite different from what it was maybe 16 months ago. So that entire corridor from the port, if you go to Costain today, you'll see that construction has been done because the narrow gauge there currently cannot support, cannot work with the standard gauge that's been built from, say, going to Ibadan. So the construction you would see at Costain today is to raise the bridge such that the standard gauge and the couch that will come into it can pass through that bridge, and you're not going to link the rail to the port. So that it won't just be by road. So these are kind of the investments that are going on. And sometimes early this year, the vice president was somewhere along the Lagos-Ibadan stretch to commission the project, Lagos-Ibadan Railway. And I've been fortunate to go around the entire stretch. And I'm glad that some work has been done around that. So we expect that once that is done, some of the problems that we see in Apapa, of course, you still need to think about technology, about automating those processes that we haven't really done. But the story is that something has been done about it. And we expect that in the next 1-2 years, we'll begin to see some of the impacts of these things that have been, of course, power. Sometimes this year, last year, July, August, I believe, Siemens signed, there was a deal, Siemens signed a deal with Nigeria to upscale our power generation from the current 4,000 megawatts that we have now to about 25,000. And we expect that in another 5 years, the power that we have today, which is very low, we would get to 25,000 megawatts, and that arrangement has begun. So these are notable projects that we believe would be an enabler for some of those things. Private sector is taking notice. There are big problems, but some people have also rather said, just like Mr. Elegbe said, and I'm very fortunate he spoke before me, that as much as the big problems, and I'm a Nigerian, I live here, bred here, so I have firsthand what a lot of us here feel. But the story is that for every challenge that we see, there are also opportunities depending on the perspectives. And of course, government has a role in making it easier for us to take advantage of it. So there was an $100 million investment in Daya Power by a Turkish company. This was about less than 2 years ago. And we also see that Isa Guerrera soybean factory. Technology is doing well, and I'm glad that InterSwitch is there. There's a story that it won't confirm that sometimes this year it might be listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. So we're beginning to see some activity in that area, particularly driven by young people who are mad enough, as it were, to start a business in Nigeria. And we're beginning to see some progress in that area. In the last 1 year, particularly in 2019, some monetary policy, some policy formulation was done that seemed to impact on the business climate in recent times. First of all was the credit conditions, that we are seeing improving credit conditions. My own bank, my own preferred bank, sometimes last year I just realized that when I logged on to the app, I was told that I could take XYZ amount of money as credit, and that could be done in 5 minutes. And I decided to try it. So I decided to do 1/4 of it, and amazing, in 5 minutes, my account was credited. That wasn't possible last year. And it could be because, well, not it could be. It is very likely, and probably, very likely that it's because of the decisions of the central bank with respect to loan deposit ratios, for example, taking it to 65%, that is now encouraging, or maybe not encourage, but has put the commercial banks in some straight fix that they've got to just advance credit. So that might have an impact, as we would see, hopefully, on manufacturing, on consumer spending, which is about 85% of the GDP now, contribution to our GDP. Interest rate has crashed. I heard one of the speakers speak about the deposit rates will come to about 1%. I mean, there were days, 2016, 2017, the treasury bills were going as high as 18%. I don't think anybody in Nigeria will be smart enough to risk his capital in building any industry or building any business when you could easily just walk to the bank, risk-free, collect your interest up front, But now with the interest rate and, of course, the deposit rate and treasury bill, even now lower than inflation rate, it's very likely that people would think of more productive use for their capital. And so you say last 3 months, about 798 basis points was reduced in interest rate. Financial inclusion, I won't speak so much about it because Mr. Mitchell has spoken about it, and reduction in bank charges and all of those things. On the fiscal policy side, for the first time in a long while, the sanctity of our January to December budget cycle has been restored. It didn't make so much news, but I think given the recent history we've had in terms of our budgets, where budget is coming into force June, May, this is something I think that Nigeria should celebrate. At least there's some sum of certainty in that respect. Last year, also, the president signed into law the deep offshore, some legislation that would make it possible that about $1 billion will be added to the government revenue. And that's very, very important because of the increasing demand of the public and the money you also need to be able to fund that. So about $1.4 billion is expected to be added to government revenue in short to medium term. The PIGB, government is beginning to talk about it, and tax administration, the finance bill, which I will just speak briefly about, we're beginning to see some traction in there. For the first time, I mean, well, at least in my own lifetime, and I'm seeing that government is not just only now thinking about just getting. Government is now, however reluctantly or however you might say it, government is beginning to appreciate that fiscal policy should not just be about collecting, it should be a way to also stimulate growth in the economy. And when growth is stimulated, you ultimately have more taxable revenue. So if you're an SME in Nigeria today, once the finance bill takes effect, your effective tax rate, CIT, company income tax, drops from 30% to 20%. And that's 10% off what you ordinarily pay. And if your turnover is less than 25 million, you don't even need, the tax man is not going to come running for you. And the vast majority of businesses in Nigeria, vast majority of business in Nigeria sits within that bracket of less than 25 million turnover. So the tax man would not even bother you. You would not be required to register for VAT because of this bill. From October, between October and now, you went to the supermarket, you went to the fuel station, and you were forced to pay 15 naira surcharge for using your POS. That threshold now has now been raised from 1,000 naira to about 10,000. The truth is that there's a law in place that has compelled the banks to do that, but now that threshold has been raised from about 1%. Mr. Michel spoke about insurance. In other climes, developed countries, South Africa's insurance to GDP is about 7 to 8%, and Nigeria is less than 1%. So it's indeed a problem that insurance is not growing. And part of the reasons why insurance hasn't taken up so much is because of certain provisions in our tax laws that makes it the incentive for insurance companies to operate. There's something that has to do with minimum losses brought forward. There was a limitation to about 4 years that made it impossible for a lot of insurance companies to get in the capital they need. The finance bill took care of that. And we see that in areas for real estate investment trust, in Nigeria, there's really no activity going on there. There are a few of them, but the reason why activity is not going there because the tax laws that exist make it just impossible for real estate insurance trust to work. And what does it do? Essentially, what it means is that because it's a holding company, you have subsidiary companies. Those subsidiary companies pay some money, would pay dividends to the holding company. The tax law says that you have to tax the subsidiary companies, and when they pay money to the holding companies, you have to tax again. So because of that, people don't just want to do investments in real estate investment trust. The finance bill has taken care of it. So there's some positives to the finance bill, and I'm glad that somehow government is beginning to recognize and admit and is doing something to make the fiscal. I mean, when we read about other countries, US, for example, last year they had some tax administration reforms which reduce effective tax rate for a lot of people. We don't usually find that happening in Nigeria. So I'm glad that if you're an SME, if your turnover is between 25 and 100 million naira, your effective tax rate has now dropped from 30% to 25%. And I should say that most of the tax issues that we face on a daily basis are not necessarily that of the federal government. is that you've got the state government that is coming on your door. You have the local government that is coming on your door. Because we operate in a federal system, it's a bit difficult, or largely even impossible, for federal governments to tell the states what to do. But what government is now beginning to look at is through the Joint Tax Board to see that let these taxes be harmonized, and sometimes let us even have, let us be able to predict how much you would have to pay. Sometimes people are not so much bothered about the amount, but by the different bodies and persons that they have to deal with in paying this tax. So if I know that I'm supposed to pay ₦1 million every year, if one taxman comes to my door and collects this 1 million on behalf of 50 people, I probably would have some more rest of mind, as opposed to 10, 20 people knocking on my door to collect different bits of this money. So some of the things the government is now looking at is, can we harmonize these fees? Can we, through the tax identification number, have a system where one person does this collection and now does this remittance? So there are conversations in that area. And to our own work, one of the ways we monitor performance in our own work is through what we call the World Bank Doing Business ranking. It's not by any means exhaustive, but it gives us an idea that some things have been done. And in the last 3 years, Nigeria, somehow, through the work that we've done, we've been able to move from a very, very bad position, where we were ranked 170 out of 190 countries. Essentially, we were in the group of war-torn countries. So you have Somalia, Sudan, we're in the neighborhood of those countries. For the last 3 years, we've been able to move from 170 in the World Bank Doing Business to 131. And in October of last year, Nigeria moved 15 places from 146 to 131. And the World Bank says we're one of the most improved countries in that area. Of course, some of these things are not yet tangible in our lives, but the story is that some things have been done. And if they are sustained, we'll begin to see some of those changes in our lives. Take, for instance, if you're a lawyer here, you know what it used to be for you to register businesses. You've got to fill the form. In fact, if you are not a lawyer, you can't even register a business. But in the last 3 years, part of the reforms we've been able to do is that you go online, go to website, cac.gov.ng, register online, make your payment, submit your form, and in as little as 48 hours, you can actually get a company registered without leaving your home. Of course, some of you might say today that why do I have to register online and I still have to submit the form physically at the Corporate Affairs Commission? It is because the law currently says that you've got to physically submit it. And part of the things we want to do in 2020, and I'll speak to it, is that we are now beginning to we will look at the business legislation, which is the Company Allied Matters Act, and see that is best. There was some efforts done in that regard last year, but presidential accent was withheld. We've resolved the gray area, and we are hopeful that this year we would have Nigeria's most important business legislation in 3 decades signed into law. And that will bring a lot of, the impact would be that there will be some, for resolving insolvencies, you would see that now as a board the law would recognize your, what do they call this? VC, video conferencing for meetings, as opposed to electronic signatures would be recognized in the law. So some of those things will take effect. As a follow-up to our recognition that all the ease of doing business issues are not just at a federal level, we decided to work with state governments, working with them, because most of the issues that you face, in fact, all businesses in Nigeria are residents in a state. So we began working with governors to see how their laws, their practices can be more business-friendly. The World Bank also did some ranking, and I won't dwell so much on that, and that some states are beginning to, at least, first of all, when people ask me, what would you consider the greatest achievement of your work? One thing I say is that at least today, if you read the newspaper, you would hear ease of doing business. That consciousness that businesses are facing challenges has at least gotten to people in the policymakers that at least there's something called ease of doing business. Whether it's lip service, whether they genuinely mean it, but there's a sense of consciousness that the businesses have to be comfortable if our economy is going to grow. And this is very, very important. In Nigeria, people, street economics, people think government is really the largest spender. Of course, government is the largest single spender, but when you look at the composition of our GDP, you would recognize that government is just playing within 8-9% of our GDP. The bulk of the productivity of this country comes from the private sector. And given the challenges that private sector grapples with today, imagine what would happen if the regulator just does what it's supposed to do, the potentials that would happen. So we started working with states. In the last 3 months, we ramped this up. 2 months, actually, we ramped this up. We're in Lagos State. We started with Lagos State, meeting with the governor, articulating the business, because Lagos is, if businesses do well in Lagos, Nigeria would do well. So we started with Lagos, and we had an executive session with the governor, and we also had an engagement with him later. We were in Owerri in November, we were in Ekiti in November, we were in Kwara in November, we were in Ujo in December. This month, we're going to be holding, we'll be having one in FCT. We've actually started that because businesses are also complaining in the Federal Capital Territory. In fact, one of the meetings the VP alluded to, one of his case studies was that to start a bakery in Abuja, you probably will pay fees of up to 1 million. This agency will come knocking. And the challenge is that these things are backed by law. So they are not just coming. So this is the gist. People just go, I have to be careful, but people go to the legislatures, lobby the legislature, and for some reason a bill is passed, a law comes into force that says you've got to take 1% of somebody's revenue. Now it becomes a question of law. Are you going to implement this law or not? There was one that particularly got into the news last year when some people just lobbied the Senate and they wanted to take, was it 10% of profits for some housing fund? 10% of somebody, how could you even think about it? But people just do these things, right? So we've got to find a way of managing it and really sensitizing the stakeholders, particularly those in government who, for some reason, have not run business or are not even close to business. And for some reasons, when they come to Lagos, when they come to Ikoyi and Banana Island, and they see the sprawling construction, there's just this belief that these people have the money. Let's try to get as much, right? So the conversation is now to work with those states and see that they come up with business-friendly, sometimes for revenue, sometimes in our engagements. I mean, I was in Elisha yesterday, and Ministry of Interior was having a retreat. And one of the things that I spoke about was expatriate quota, for example. In the last 4 months, there was a particular delay, and we kept engaging the ministry. Yes. So the ministry said they wanted to do due diligence. Oh, don't we want you to do due diligence? Yes, do it. But let there be an air of predictability. If it's going to take 4 months, if your due diligence is going to take 6 months, let the private sector know that it will take 6 months. Give us this 6 months to clear our organ stable. After 6 months, we will be sure to solve all of this. So sometimes internally, there's also that conversation internally to say, okay, how about if you want to take up this policy, can we do it better? Can you sensitize the policy? Can you keep communicating? But communication is not something that is particularly second nature to people in government. Sometimes people even think what communication is just issue press statements, and that's all right? So it takes some time, but I want you to understand that there are some people in government who are thinking about you and engaging our internal stakeholders and saying, can we do this better? For example, the finance bill, I remember was a big conversation internally. And we just had to make a strong case that you've got to give businesses a break, right? You've just got to give the businesses a break, because that is really where our work will, our economy would actually succeed. In rounding off, in 2019, in the ease of doing business, one of the things we want to focus on, of course, the traditional World Bank doing business. And why does it matter? because it matters to external investors, foreign investors. They probably want to check how easy for me to resolve disputes if I come into this country. So they have a measure of metrics table they look at, and sometimes these tables or these metrics influence their choice of investing in a country. So we care about that to that extent. The second thing is to communicate more, listen to the private sector. The lituation, I use the word lituation. Lituation is actually a play from listen, implement, and track. We know that policies have to start. I mean, just like Mr. Heligbe said, there are business solutions that you might be thinking of as an entrepreneur that doesn't necessarily speak to the problem of the people. And so it also exists in public policy where sometimes you just think this is what needs to be done. So we want to listen more to people, and we'll be going across the states just even understand the pains and not to assume we know everything. So we'll listen, and that will feed into our implementation, and of course, we'll track it. Because whatever is not being measured really cannot be improved upon. The third thing is the subnational. The subnational is very big on our minds because the governors, the state governments, they play a great deal. Plus or minus, 43% of our revenue as a country goes to states, right? So if we are preoccupied with just 57%, what happens to the 43? And sometimes governors can better influence decisions and faster. So as a president, it might be difficult for you to influence the National Assembly. The Senate president is probably a former governor. You have 6, 7 former governors in the Senate. What am I? Probably more in the Senate. But a governor can call his speaker and say, Speaker, I want you to come to my house tonight. And in 2 days, some bills can be passed in 2 days. That can influence the business climate. So we are taking our engagement with the state government very seriously because we recognize that they hold some power to making things work in the country. Of course, in legislative reform, spoken about the Company and Allied Matters Bill, it's a big one on our mind, and we are intent on getting it through this year. Expansion of our regulatory reform program. I've spoken a lot about regulators. People have told us that the cost of complying with regulatory procedures or demands is very prohibitive. So we are working closely with our regulators. And the first thing we want to do is to even quantify the cost so that it becomes a strong case for people in government that you are talking about tax revenues, but people somehow, whether through informal means, pay a lot more that might not be captured. If you make things better, streamline the process, probably we might be able to reduce this cost, and people will begin to say something has been done in ease of doing business. I've got 10 minutes, and this is my last slide. We've got to believe in Nigeria. I'm so grateful that the person who spoke before me spoke, and it's that things will get better. Maybe we just need to persevere a little more. And I happen to be a Christian, and I think if there's anything that is so strong on my mind, is that the basic tenet of our faith suggests to us that we can see impossibilities where it just appears there's none. All right? So we believe that there is a God who commanded light out of darkness. All right? So there is a lot of reason not to be hopeful in this country, but I am very positive that there's at least a semblance of the right direction. It might not be significant enough to persuade us in the logical realm, but if we understand what is happening, we'll see that certain things are being positioned. As I speak to young people, because Canada, I used to work in a technology firm in a Fortune 500 company. I was shocked when my colleague, well, I left there 2 years ago, but I was shocked when a colleague in a Fortune 500 company who is paid in dollars in Nigeria decided to just leave this country for Canada. And I'm like, oh, for what? We are well paid in this country, but so it's a present-day mentality. But one thing I would believe, and that's why we're talking about why I believe in Nigeria, is that for anybody that wants to leave this country, by all means do, for the right reasons. But please, we must not be tempted enough to work in an escapist mentality, all right? If we happen to leave, what about the 13 million school-age children that will never get the opportunity to get out of this country? For every one person that is about to leave this country, there are thousands more who will never get the opportunity to leave. So if you were to leave, right, make sure it's for the right reasons. Probably to acquire new skills, get better exposed, go to school, but our mind must always be back home, right? Because the future of this country essentially lies on our hands. And I'm glad that people are the greatest resource of any nation. If the people can band together and first of all believe that it is possible. I believe in self-fulfilling prophecies. I believe that the expectation of an event, say event A, creates unconsciously certain practices or beliefs in the person holding that expectation that in turn makes the likelihood of that expectation happening. So if I believe in an event A, some way, somehow, that belief that I have triggers certain expectations or practices or behaviors in me unknowingly that in turn make the realization of that expectation stronger. So if the majority of people, I would actually think the first starting point is that it is possible. And a lot of countries have done it. 3 decades, essentially, people moved from being a third world country to first. And I can name 5 countries on my fingertips that actually made that happen. So we believe, and I strongly believe that in our life, in 3 decades, we can actually turn the fortunes of this country around. But we've got to believe. If we believe and band together as citizens, certain practices will naturally emerge that will make the realization of that belief come into part. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think you should just stay behind to take questions. I'm sure we've all posted our questions on Slido. And thanks for that wonderful presentation. I think what we're going to right now is more of practical questions that relate to what's really going on in our business climate. So my own question to you is, what's the sustainability of the PEBEC after this government leaves? We're seeing improvements in ranking at the World Bank level from 146 to 131. Assuming a new government comes into power, let's say another party, I don't know, are they going to be motivated to continue the good work that you're currently doing at the moment? And what's your thought on that?
Thank you very much. We get this question a whole lot of time. So first of all, our work is interventionist. If all the ministries, departments, and agencies were doing what they should do in the right way, we probably won't have a reason for PEBEC. So our first goal is to work with the MDAs, and that's what we've been doing the last 2 years, to essentially let them see that ease of doing business is not something that should be separate from the day-to-day running or operation of any MDA. So that's the biggest challenge, and that's what we are focused on. And we do our work. The secretariats where my colleagues and I work, we're just a bunch of, just a very small number. The MDAs, whatever reform that has been done in the last 2-3 years, we're actually done by these MDAs. What we did was each MDA, the priority MDAs, because they're about, I don't even have the number, probably more than 800 or 900 ministries, departments, and agencies. So our goal was to first prioritize. Maybe we just got a bunch of 43 that we think would make the biggest dent on this doing business climate. So we identified those 43, and we asked them to set up what we call Ease of Doing Business Committee. We have a reform champion who is no less than a deputy director. And on a daily basis, the reform champion is responsible for escalating some of them. I should say, there is part of a way to get feedback from members of the public. We launched an app called reportgov.ng. It's available online, www.reportgov.ng. It's available on your Android or iOS. You can download it, reportgov. You have about 18 MDAs, your customs, your immigration listed on it. If you have any challenges, any problem with any of those MDAs currently listed, please use the app, and I can assure you someone on the other end is going to resolve your complaints. Someone is going to respond, and we would ensure that the complaints that you have has been solved. And we're beginning to get interesting traction in that regard because people have started using it. Some people wanted to get visa on arrival for businessmen who want to come into the country. They had certain challenges, we were able to resolve it. So please use it. So the first goal, and which is our strategy, is to imbibe into the MDs the work. Because the truth is that there's always going to be that political uncertainty. There would always be a new administration. What will happen? We resisted the temptation of having a legislation that would make us an agency. Because if you're not careful, we become another agency like all those agencies. So the goal is to work with the MDs to see that they imbibe that. And we're beginning to make some progress in that regard.
All right, thank you very much. I think the questions, while we wait for the questions we put on the screen, the first question here says, how does the impact of the presidency not obeying court orders affect ease of doing business?
Quite very straightforward. I won't speak for the Attorney General, so I would advise that you wrote your question to the Attorney General. I'm just there for ease of business. But of course, judgments.
No, but let's be a bit more realistic. I mean, you pass. There's certain work you're doing. Let's say visa on arrival or certain thing that has to do with, foreigners coming into this country.
Yeah.
And you know that there are certain court orders that are still pending, haven't been addressed.
Maybe the first
that
question,
already puts your whole effort into.
You're right to one extent. I'm not sure most of the cases that you have in mind are actually business related. So I can't really speak to it. And
we're in Nigeria. We all face
But of course, because government is so large, there's a reason you have Attorney General. I don't speak to that. If I tell you any answer right now,
okay, so
I'll
let's
just
do it this
an
way.
answer that I don't know, right? So,
okay, so your importer needs about 75 signatures. In bracket customs and all of them. How can this be reduced to encourage ease of doing business?
I'm not sure of the number, but I will be surprised if it's up to 75. But that's not to say that there's no huge problem in that area. All right, it's a massive problem. I alluded to it about the ports and all that. But Customs launched what we call NICES 2 this year. So there are two problems on my mind now. One is the power of discretion. What automation does is that it removes the room for discretion. And currently there's a lot of discretionary powers by customs agencies to interpret, for example. So you can have a product that has maybe 3 different HS codes interpretation. And depending on the HS codes that you interpret, that your interpretation is, the rates might change. So for solar panel, for example, if you import solar panel as different units, let's say you have a battery separate, you have solar panel, it probably will be 5%. But if you import it as a single component, it could go as high as 15%. So somebody who has discretionary powers can say it should be 15% when he knows that it should be 5%. So part of the reasons why we have that app is to resolve some of those issues, right? So I'm not sure it's 75, but what I can say is that for documentation, we've reduced some number in the last 3 years. With NICES 2 now, and I think just a few months into the end of last year, there was, I can't remember, there was one process that was now even put on automation. So it's a gradual process. The truth is that for a lot of MDAs, they are in different technology maturity stages. So maybe you need a NAFDAC certification for you to import a product. NAFDAC might not be at the... So even if it automates customs, you need to get NAFDAC automated so that they can speak to each other. So this takes time, but I can tell you that for export documentation, we had about 14 before, and I think that has dropped to 9. Now, that has dropped to 9. What we are now working on is to the speed of processing those documents. Because sometimes it's not even just about the number, but the speed of processing.
Okay, I think what would help is if you can take back some of these comments. And I think it would be good for us to also know if I put a comment on the report.gov app, how soon can I get a response? Or how do I know that those things are being addressed?
So if that's a question, I can assure you that within 72 hours, once you lodge your complaint, someone would at least acknowledge it, right? Okay. That I can commit to.
All right, so there's another question that says, is there a concrete plan by government to decentralize the national grid? Do you agree this is the quick fix to problem of distribution? That's a very interesting question.
Oh, yeah.
The power sector has numerous issues. So decentralizing the national grid is not the quickest fix. So, but I'll allow you to take...
Thank you for answering. There are a number of issues, and they have different solutions from your cost-reflective pricing to quite a number of issues. But for decentralizing, certainly government, there's this willing buyer, willing seller policy of the Federal Ministry of Power, and that's why you have places like Magodo, for example, that can now consume power. You're now seeing maybe there's some renewable energy projects. So for example, you find some universities right now that federal government is now giving them their direct own power supply, different from. So I know Federal University in Ebonyi, for example, now has solar panel power in it. So I think as a matter of policy, it is pretty clear that you need to decentralize, and that's all I can say about that. And there are a few examples.
Okay, so what I'll say is, what is the PEBEC team doing to facilitate or also ensure that you advocate for stable power supply?
What's your name, please?
My name is Damilola Aloba.
Okay, I'd like to be able to call you for my first
name. Everyone, call me Damilola. Everyone knows what we're going through in that sector, but I think your role is more of trying to ensure that you bring all the relevant agencies together to ensure that issues are resolved.
I completely agree. The council has 13 members, and one of the members is the Honorable Minister of Power, who sits in council. Honorable Minister of Works, Attorney General. So you have central bank governor. Those who should be in the room are essentially in the room. So in terms of policy, I'm sure that government recognizes that you've got to decentralize as one of the areas to solving the problems. But the how to do that, given the current issues that we have, is a different ballgame at time. But I've taken your feedback, and it's certainly something that we are discussing internally.
Thank you. So the other question is, we understand the federal government is planning to automate clearing of goods at the port. What are the timelines to complete this project?
For automation is clearly going to be something that is, how do I put it, that you keep going at doing. So I know the urgent one right now is to have like a truck call-up system for truckers, so that if you don't have a business going to the port, you should not really go into ports. Because sometimes the issue with gridlock, which a lot of people can relate with because of the tailback to Eco Bridge and all of that, is that sometimes truckers just go to the port looking for business and who should not really be there. And especially if you don't if you don't have a system that calls the person that needs to be called up and ensures that someone at the port gates doesn't allow a truck that shouldn't go into the port come to pass. So that's one of the things we are working on. For automation, it's a big elephant project. And part of the things, not big elephant project, it's a big project. And part of the things is to actually attract private capital. Because the truth is that government doesn't have the wherewithal to, I mean, like I said, interestingly, I was at a port in the Middle East last month, and it was amazing the kind of automation I saw. It's not just even basic. You find that the crane system to move containers from the ship to the dock is actually being operated by ladies who just use joystick in some room far away from the port. So it is certainly desirable. With respect to the funding, it's something that has been worked up. The National Trading Platform, for example, is something also that would speak to the automation. I know, for example, that the Sovereign Investment Agency is looking in that regard, looking for the right options, and probably looking for a joint venture operation that will protect and sort of protect, for lack of a better, protect that investment so that successive administrations will not change whatever it has been done right now. And so some of this conversation is internal that nothing conclusive yet, so I can't tell you.
Okay. So we have just 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes. How do we achieve a 24-hour port system?
I think I've spoken about that, right, sir?
Have you?
Yeah.
Okay, let's take the next.
Yeah.
This question says, there are security risks with granting visas on arrival for Africans. I think that's the latest pronouncement of the president. So how can this risk be mitigated?
So first of all, this visa on arrival is not for everybody, right? It's only for business travelers. In other words, if you want to come to Nigeria for tourism, you're not going to qualify for this purpose, right? And the way visa on arrival operates is that it's got to be a Nigerian company who wants you, who will request on your behalf that this person is coming to Nigeria for a business meeting, for a short-term stay, and that person will be held responsible. The main benefit of this is that if you have a foreigner coming to Nigeria for business, our visas can be can take a long and arduous process. Some of our embassies probably might not have one. So for some reasons, we thought it was important for businesses who you go to Germany for a seminar, conference, you met in Nigeria. If you go to someone in Kenya and go that perspective, so it's for business travelers, not open to everybody. And internally, security agencies also have a system that it's not robust enough, but in December, I was fortunate before the policy was announced, DSS, NIA, a lot of agencies who have interest in this, there was actually a simulation done where at least some basic information about the traveler will come in. And that's one of the reasons why, so that I don't go out of scope. But the thing is that, first of all, it's not for everybody, it's for business travelers, and there's got to be someone in Nigeria requesting on your behalf and saying that you're coming to me. So that person essentially will be held responsible for this. And I should also say that this visa is only for the airports. For the airport, it's not, you can't go for visa on arrival through the land borders, for example. And coming through the airports, we expect that some basic checks would have been done at the airports where you're leaving from to be sure that you have a business to come into the country. So it's restricted, it's not one free for everybody to come into the country.
Okay. What can be done to reduce the sudden hike in cost of right-of-way for installing fiber optic cables across 14 states in Nigeria?
This is a big issue, and it also sits within the jurisdiction of states. So at the National Economic Council, the conversation has started, and some states like Kaduna, for example, have said that, you know what, don't pay, we just want. And that's the sort of peer pressure that the states are putting upon themselves. But that conversation is that the National Economic Council has come up with a policy, and governors are now looking. So an Anambra, for example, would rather say, instead of you paying upfront, would find a way to get this money after a while. So it's the states, and at the federal level, what we can do is to use moral suasion and also to the convening power to bring the stakeholders into one room and give them the suite of options that are there. So it's a big problem, but some states are beginning to take move the right direction.
What is the website of the federal government of Nigeria? How easy is it for foreigners to go online and access information directly from the government?
Good. So I'm not sure there is a single website for Nigeria, all right? But I know that is being done currently by Ministry of Communication Technology. So like I said, for you to really have a website for the country, you don't want, except you just want to have informational websites that is not functional. For you to be functional, it means that all the participating MDAs, at least the major ones, have some form of technology. So if I go to a website and I send an email, let me share an example. I got into this thing I'm doing right now because I decided to work on the Reports.gov app. It's just a personal project, and anyways, when we started, I just assumed that once you have a report gov, people. But I realized that going to the MDAs, no internet. The people that will respond to the cases, they don't have laptops, right? So there are different technology maturity. There are different technology maturity phase, and you need to be able to solve these underlying problems before you have. So there are agencies like FIRS, CAC, immigration, for example. For example, that visa arrival is online. Those agencies that we see that they are a bit mature, those are the ones that we're now thinking of putting together and connecting in a single way. The executive order one actually has a direction, is desirous of having one government, but that one government cannot happen until some of these agencies improve their technology, and that will take some time, really.
Okay, I'll just ask you one more question because we have less than 5 minutes. How does the federal government's closure of borders improve the ease of doing business in Nigeria?
So the border closure, internally, as you would expect in every organization, they're usually dissenting voices. Like some department might say, let's do this, some other department might say this. But the decision has been taken by government. Certainly, we've seen the effect on prices. In the last 3-4 months, we saw that inflation, which 18 months before then has constantly gone down. We saw that there's a spike. Right? I'm very hopeful that once the Joint Security Border Patrol that has now been established has its own mechanism fully sorted, that the borders will be open. The truth is that there's a problem. And the problem, as one of the speakers alluded to, Benin, for example, imports rice that cannot feed it, that much more than it requires. So there's certainly an impact on the ease of doing business with respect to the border closure, and that is seen an inflation spike in the last 3 months. But what I can say that internal government has taken this, seen the numbers, and knows that this border closure has to be wrapped up in the closest time that is possible. And the way to do that is now conversations going through with the neighboring countries, and now they've set up a joint security border patrol. And would expect that once the agencies, the countries agree on the right protocol for moving goods in and outside Nigeria, particularly within the framework of the ECOWAS trade liberalization, we would have the border open. A tentative has been given for end of this month, but that has been reviewed depending on how the countries are able to harmonize this protocol. But certainly there's an impact, and government is pretty much aware.
All right, I'd like to say thank you. I want us to give him a round of applause. Thank you so much for the insights. Right about now, we'll be heading out for a lunch break. So the lunch break is for 30 minutes between now and 2:30. As we have announced earlier, you should go downstairs if you want to eat, you need to pay for the food.